Monday at evening, John Orand posted something, and he's a sports media insider, and he finally, for the first time, I believe, talked about AEW media rights as it relates to WBD. And he threw out a number that I know that you and I had both heard months ago. Now we've heard a bunch of different numbers, but this one came from a pretty good source, and it was 170 million, which
a year.
Yes. Sorry, I should clarify that. Now, what 170 million buys WBD, we're not quite sure. We're not sure if it includes pay-per-view or not. We're not sure if it includes extra shows or not. Oren believes that it includes some sort of content on True TV, which may be yes and no, because it may be replays.
Okay,
is what the speculation is. So because he said twice a week on True TV, in addition to TBS and TNT. So yeah, there's
why?
Why what?
Why this much content?
Because they lost the NBA.
That's true.
Yeah, and because it brings, even though the ratings are down, and they're down quite a bit, even though the ratings are down, it's relatively consistent. It's 52 weeks a year.
Yeah.
So, you're getting basically, if they pick up Rampage, Collision, and Dynamite, that's 5 hours a week. That's 52 weeks a year. That's 260 hours. So at 170 million, I mean, that's, what, 800,000, 700,000 an episode, an hour? That's not that much. I mean, when you're talking about premium cable television, it sounds like a big number, but we got to remember, it's all their content, and it may also include pay-per-view. So I personally don't think it's worth that. I've done some math, and I know other people have as well. Brandon Thurston did a podcast today where he talked about this, right?
There are a lot of people in a tizzy over this conversation, Paul. And
yes.
I'm going to let me talk to you for a moment.
Let me talk to you.
There are two things that are going to happen when this deal is finalized. Number one, AEW is going to be on television, and number two, they're going to have a little bit more money. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's the list. And everybody is fantasy booking, well, if they get this Fox deal, then maybe Big Fox will like, because SmackDown, the cost was too much, blah, blah. Those are false narratives for the most part. Yes, it was expensive, but Big Fox also didn't want wrestling on their TV.
Yeah, they want college football.
They want college football. They don't want wrestling. They wanted something sports related in there, and they wanted $4.5 million a week, which was the value over replacement of Last Man Standing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people now that they have this extra money, AEW can go out and sign free agents. There ain't nobody to sign.
Well, there's that, and there's also the aspect of they did what my kids do,
or they can spend their pay they have.
Well, they spent their paycheck before it came.
Yes.
Because Brandon Thurston, a lot of people miss this because I don't know how many people actually subscribe to his Patreon. They see his tweets and they infer things that he didn't say.
Yes, and they look at like other tweets that summarize podcasts and things like that, and they take things out of context. Because I listened to that Pollock and Thurston, and the tweet I sent to you that had his point, absolutely missed on what he was saying.
Well, and I read it and I was like, well, I don't agree with that, but I also don't think he said it. And then you listened and you said, well, he didn't say it.
I said, Brandon, what Thurston said was AEW has television value, which it does.
Right. But the summary said it had no value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what he said was it has television value, but he has concerns about the declining fan base.
Correct. Now, a couple things. This Brandon Thurston did an analysis in late, I want to say November or December of last year, when we've been going on this media rights thing for like a year and a half. And at that time, he was trying to estimate. It's believed that AEW was getting $85 million a year in 2024. It would have been less than that last year. So that would include Dynamite, Collision, Rampage, Battle of the Belts. $85 million for all that. He did an analysis of what he believed their costs were, and their revenues. He showed, ticket sales, sponsorships, all this stuff. He used information he had. He guessed on some salaries. It's an educated guess because we hear certain things about certain people, and we hear what WWE is paying and what their minimum is and what it would take to get someone from WWE if they're going to be a main eventer, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, he estimated that they needed a $125 million TV deal in order to be profitable. That's what his estimates were. That's before Okada, Ospreay, Mercedes, and whoever else they've signed since then, whoever else they've given an extension to, like Swerve Strickland and others. It may even have been before the Elite re-signed their extensions, which were, Hangman, the Bucks, getting, and Omega getting multi-millions. If you add up these salaries, it doesn't take you long to get to a pretty big number because you've got guys making in the multi-millions, talent, I should say, making in the multi-millions are probably, Swerve, Danielson, Moxley, Jericho, the Bucks, Hangman, Okada, Mercedes, Ospreay, and probably more, that for whatever reason I'm not thinking of. And then Swerve. You've got, I think he was the first name I said.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah. And then you've also got, I believe this, I've heard a podcast, and anybody that's on an all elite deal, basically, like they only work for AEW, they're not on a per day deal. They're getting at least 6 figures.
Yes.
And they have a lot of people under contract.
Yes.
And then there's guys in the middle, like Sammy Guevara, Mark Briscoe, Jack Perry, Orange Cassidy is probably higher than the middle.
And you've also got to assume that anybody under a multi-year contract has escalation clauses.
Yes. Sting is probably still under contract, would be my guess.
Adam Copeland,
Christian Cage. I mean, so I don't think it's hard to believe that since then their expenses might have gone up 25, 30 million. Well, now you're up to 150, 155. And if pay-per-view is part of this 170 million, well, there goes your pay-per-view revenue. And all of a sudden you're back to like being break even at 170. Now you're not losing money. And maybe I'm off, on some of this. And maybe they're going to get a Fox deal. Maybe pay-per-view is not included. But ticket sales are going down. So that's the other thing. That's assuming all that stuff stayed at the level it was at last year, which it hasn't. Their average ticket sales have gone down about 15 to 20%. The other thing is this is rumored to be a 3-year deal with a 1-year option.
Yes.
Well, most of these are going 5, 6, 7, 10 years. WWE signed a 10-year deal.
Netflix's has potential to be 20.
Right. Yeah. There's 2 5-year options at Netflix thing. I think after 10, it might be both there. They have to both agree. So
right.
It's probably 10 because
it doesn't matter. It's just what the point only is. 3. Other places are long-term deals. This is a short-term one.
If they continue to decline at the rate that they have been, which has been going on over 2 years right now, I did some math, and the numbers don't look good. If they continue to go down 20% a year over year, by the time we get to 2027, when they're renewing again, Dynamite's going to be at around 350,000 a week and about a 0.14 in the demo. No, a 0.13 in the demo. Rampage would be like 118,000 and a 0.05. Collision would be around Collision would be around 2.25 and about a 0.07, 08. Those numbers aren't worth a big increase. And the problem is the talent increases are going to go, the talent costs are going to go up in that time. So they need to like turn this around. And I don't know how they do.
I also think part of that is also, we don't know what's going to be the landscape for WBD in 3 years.
True. Because their NHL deal comes up in 3 years.
Yeah. It's a company in a bit of turmoil.
Yeah.
And it's not going to get any better once they officially lose the NBA, which will be after this next year.
That might hurt AEW's ratings.
Yeah, because the advertising won't be there.
Yeah,
as
they
well.
advertise AEW during NBA games.
Mhm.
There's also more people turning into the network,
Yes.
just out of habit. And maybe they lose their premium position on cable systems.
I am look, I'm always cynical.
Mhm.
I mean, that is my brand to be had. So I'd be a little concerned here. I mean, you're gonna get 3 years of product. I don't worry about that. I mean, TNA has been on for 30 some odd years now in some form. I think AEW will be the same. But when you look at the roster and you look at the wrestlers and you look at this, who's the savior? Who's the guy that's gonna really pop something here? And I don't know if that can be, because it's not gonna be the product itself. And this is the downside. This is the other edge of the sword when you book for sickos. There's only a
Yeah.
limited number of sickos out there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's one of those things. And you watch this show, and the things that we liked that we're going to talk about tonight are the certain times where people actually showed emotion and an emotional connection to the work. And you don't really
And they
get that.
got that emotional response as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you don't get that in a lot of, for lack of a better term, indie style wrestling. You get the good, clean, functional, but the guys themselves, in pay-per-views they're connected, but not on the week-to-week television. Not when we're going through the motions, etc. They're good matches, but it's also just, we don't have the personalities popping. We don't have, like, our boy Garrett is a big fan of the challenge. Loves the challenge. I find this show repulsive, but he loves the challenge. What makes the challenge special?
Personalities.
Personalities and getting into fights. That's the secret. Reality, I've said it for years, reality television does professional wrestling better than professional wrestling these days, because
Yeah.
we see these conflicts. We see people cut promos on each other. We see people get into fights. And this is what people want out of wrestling, in my opinion. I don't subscribe to well, there's a bunch of lapsed fans out there that we can get if they only see that this wrestling is more quality than the WWE stuff that turned them off, blah, 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 blah. There is not a huge difference between the quality of wrestling in WWE and AEW.